We will be looking at India as a linguistic area in the course Language and Society today. The idea of linguistic area is an important aspect in understanding the complexities involving the two terms language and society. We have seen language in details and then we have tried to understand society. When we put the two together, and that is where language exists, the term becomes more complex. And when we try to understand such a complexity, there comes a point where we need to understand what we mean as linguistic area. We are going to be looking at this aspect with few examples to understand how it is relevant in the broader understanding of the term language and society. Besides this, we have been looking at language and we have primarily tried to understand language from the perspectives of sounds, words and sentences. That is, we have looked at very briefly three aspects to understand the internal and underlying aspects, underlying properties of language, underlying rules of language. Then we have understood associated terms like first language, mother tongue, native language. These terms we use many a times without much deliberations on these. However, here in the context of language learning and acquisition of language, we have seen these terms in details. Then became relevant was second language, foreign language and then languages in India. The intersection between learning of first language and learning of second language, where we need to make the distinction between acquisition and learning, is relevant in understanding the intersections between language and society. And to give an idea of how complex it becomes, that is the question of language and society, we have also very briefly looked at the question of languages in India. We have defined what we mean by language, we have also defined what we mean by languages, and we have established that in a society, when we are in performance, nobody speaks just one language. That is to say, in other words, everybody is a multilingual. In the micro sense, the ability to navigate through different varieties of language is also part of multilinguality, which we will keep pushing time and again to get the real definition of language. Now, looking at the last part, languages in India, we will extend our discussions to the parts of linguistics area, and here is where we are going to be looking at. The point languages in India is also very interesting because it is believed that 1/3 of the languages of the world are spoken in this subcontinent. There are approximately 6,000 languages in the world and around 2,000 of them were assumed to have been spoken in Indian subcontinents. However, a note of caution is important here, that nobody knows the total number of languages spoken in the world, given the difficulties involved in counting languages, and that becomes another technical point which we leave aside for the time being. Even statistically, we do not know total number of languages spoken in the world or total number of languages spoken in India. Grierson's Linguistic Survey of India claims something around 1652. However, a modern attempt in recent time by what is termed as People's Linguistic Survey of India claims only 790, that is approximately 800 spoken living languages in Indian subcontinent. These are the matters of discussions and debates. However, whether 800 or 1600 they are huge numbers, and that is what is relevant for us to understand the significance of language in our society. We will be looking at why we speak so many languages and how it is related to origin of languages shortly. But when we try to look at the languages spoken in the world, there are two ways to classify all of them. One is genetic classification, the other is typological classification. Genetic classification is based on common origins among languages, whereas typological classification is based on common properties of linguistic structure, that is common properties of sentences, common properties of types of features available in languages. We have these two types of ways to look at the languages of the world. We will focus ourselves on languages in India. We call here that the title here is given as languages of the world because we can look at all the languages spoken in the world from these two perspectives. However, we will focus ourselves on languages in India. And here I introduce the term India as a linguistic area, as this term was first introduced by Emeno in 1956, a great and renowned scholar of the study of South Asian languages, came up with this idea and he defined it, and as the term refers to, it is about the common traits and features that are across language families. To elaborate, there are certain features of languages of one family that transcends the family boundary, and they are also available in the other languages of the other family. So, and such common features are helpful in defining linguistic area. Therefore, we would like to look at both genetic and typological classifications of languages spoken in India, and then we can come back to the term India as a linguistic area, what Emeno meant by this and what are the features that he is referring to. The features that are common across members of the language families. Genetically speaking, there are 5 major language families in India. That is, whether we believe in the counting done by George Grierson of 1652 living or dead languages spoken in this subcontinent, or a modern estimate of 800 by People's Linguistic Survey of India, all of them will be classified in 5 major language families, and these, the terms to refer to these families are called Indo-Aryan family of languages, Dravidian family of languages, Munda, which is also called Austro-Asiatic family of languages, and Andamanese. A word of caution here, most of the languages spoken in this subcontinent, that is in the mainland, belong to either Indo-Aryan or Dravidian family of languages. The 2 other families, Tibeto-Burman and Munda, however, there are considerable number of languages and very significantly and diverse languages spoken in these families still stay on the margins. We will be looking at the details and some of the names of these languages as well. To get an idea, languages like Kashmiri, Mandayali, Punjabi, Haryanvi, Hindi, Marwari, Mewari, Gujarati, Bundelkhandi, Oriya, Brajbhasha, Magahi, Maithili, Awadhi, Bhojpuri, Bengali, Marathi, all of them belong to Indo-Aryan family of languages. I am only counting names here for the purpose of simplicity. Languages like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, primarily these 4 languages belong to Dravidian family of languages, which also includes Tulu. Languages like Manipuri, Naga, Mar, Mizo, Angami, and a huge host of languages is spoken in the northeastern states of India like Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, and also in large parts of Assam are called Tibeto-Burman languages. They are also called Himalayan because lot of languages is spoken in Himalayan ranges are also part of Tibeto-Burman family of languages. Munda, which is called Austro-Asiatic family of languages, languages like Santhali, Ho, Urao, and several other languages is spoken in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, southeast of West Bengal, Orissa, and Madhya Pradesh are part of Munda family of languages. And a huge bunch of languages is spoken in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are grouped together as Andamanese languages. That's the genetic spread, that's the spread of languages according to its genetic classifications. Now, as it was mentioned before, languages of families, one family is supposed to have common origins. Languages of the family share certain common linguistic properties as well. However, to point it out again, when one feature shared by a host of languages within one family spreads to another family, that is because the languages from the other family are also spoken in close proximity, and in such a case what we get is what we call a linguistic area. So, even though India speaks languages from 5 different families, there are features that all these 5 families share, and on the basis of those features, India has been defined or called a linguistic area. Typologically speaking, where the fundamental basis for classification of languages is the structure of sentence, which is completely independent of their genetic proximities. There are only 3 types of languages across the world. They are either SVO, where S refers to subject, V to verb, and O to objects, and SVO primarily means the order of the words in a sentence is going to be subject, verb, and object. The order of the fundamental words in a sentence in the other type is going to be SOV, that is subject, object, and verb, and then there are some languages that are VSO. Now, as we know, there are 2 parts of sentences, one is the subject, the other is the predicate. In the predicate, what is more important is verb. So, if we want to look at the structure of a sentence from the position of the verb in a sentence, we have to say 3 things. Some languages are verb medial like English and Khasi. It is an important footnote to mention here that most of the languages spoken in India across 5 language families are verb final languages, that is, they belong to the second category. However, one language spoken in Garo Hills of Meghalaya named Khashi is like English, as it happens to be a verb medial language where the verb occurs in the middle of the sentence. And then languages like Arabic are verb initial languages. Position of verb is very important in classifying languages in typological lines depending upon the structure of sentences. I want to give you two examples of what we mean by typological classifications. So, here is a sentence which is Ram आम खाता है. I am taking a canonical simple Hindi sentence to demonstrate this point, and let us look at the point. This is how a sentence is transcribed with simplicity induced in phonetic transcription. So, this is Ram, this is mango, this is eat plus habitual aspect, which is also indicative of singular number and masculine gender. This much is at least visible information that the verb is loaded with, and this is verb be in its present form, which indicates present tense marker. Also has singular on number on it. Does not have gender on it, but definitely has singular number on it. Together they create a verbal complex where the tense marker happens to be an independent morpheme, independent verb, independent word, but it is part of the verbal complex. And then this sentence is Ram eats a mango. This is the way to represent sentences which are from languages other than English. First we put the sentence in transliteration, then we put glosses as specified as possible, and then we put an English sentence. So, in the context of the typological classification, with this example itself, what I want to point out is the following. This is the verb in English, and this is the object in English. This is the verb, and this happens to be the subject. This is why a language like English is called SVO language, whereas what you see in a language like Hindi is this is the verbal complex. This one is the object, and then this is the subject. So, a language like Hindi is, so in Hindi you have a subject, you have an object, and you have a verb. So, a language like Hindi is called SOV. That is about typological classification of languages. So, English will be a verb medial language all the time, and Hindi and most of the languages spoken in Indian subcontinent is going to be verb final languages, and that this example helps you understand this point. Now, what is interesting to note here is the specifications on agreement. As you can see, the gloss in two languages indicates the agreement pattern. But we will stick to only the classification in terms of the structure of the word and in terms of the order in which constituents of a sentence appear in the language. A language like in a language like Arabic, what is expected is the verb becomes the first constituent. Now, most of the languages spoken in this subcontinent across language families, being verb final languages, is also or could possibly be attributed to one of the features of India as a linguistic area. However, so this is the map of languages spoken in Indian subcontinent. It is a larger map, and it is not a political map, it is a linguistic map of Indian subcontinent. And please see the spread of languages according to these families in the map. Everything that you see in green is part of what is widely termed as Indo-European, and here we would like to call it Indo-Aryan, because Indo-Aryan is a smaller part of Indo-European, and all these languages spoken in these parts are Indo-Aryan languages. So, see, beginning from this part, some parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan to the huge range of mainland of India, and going all the way to Assam, and also in parts of Tripura, and all the way down, as you see, parts of southern Sri Lanka speaks Indo-Aryan languages. The language which is Indo-Aryan in Sri Lanka is Sinhalese, and this is how we see the spread of Indo-Aryan languages. Look at the spread of Dravidian languages, which is indicated in red. This is the main part of our geography which speaks Dravidian languages. Parts of Sri Lanka speaks Dravidian languages. You see some patches in Pakistan which speaks Dravidian languages as well. You see a pink mark here, this marks Brusaski, and there is a debate that there is not much of a difference between pink mark and red mark, in the sense that this is also one of the Dravidian languages. Interesting to note here is these blue patches, they are indicative of Munda languages, and then the yellow patches are indicative of Tibeto-Burman languages, which are this is the part of Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Mizoram, Manipur and Tripura. A huge part of Assam also speaks some or the other Tibeto-Burman languages, and then it is also the languages from the Tibeto-Burman family are also spoken in the Himalayan ranges of Nepal. That this map of Indian subcontinent shows the spread of language families in the geography. Now, I want to talk about just a few features which are common across language families, and they are unique features of particular language families, but they are spread all over, and they are counted as India as part of features defining India as a linguistic area. The first thing, and please look at the point here, I have organized these features in terms of sounds, words and sentences. So, at the level of sounds, we have some retroflex sounds like t, d. This is retroflex sounds are specific features of Dravidian languages, and with the contact of Dravidian languages to Sanskrit, retroflex sounds spread to other Indo-Aryan languages or modern Indo-Aryan languages. Primarily, it was available in Dravidian languages, and thus they have spread to other Indo-Aryan languages and too. Compound verbs, which are verbs consist of two verbs together, but they constitute a single linguistic unit, single semantic unit, and therefore they are called compound verbs. Look at the verb here, example of the verb here. This is a simple verb, there is nothing compound about it. Compound verbs are like when we say a sentence like बैठ जाइए, in Hindi, which literally means sit, and then this means go, imperative. This sentence does not mean, this means sit, or it means with a request, please, that is, please sit. What it definitely not means is sit and go. In other words, what I am saying is, there are two verbs together, sit and go. They constitute one single linguistic unit, which together means sit. In the use, we can see this thing in a sentence. Baith jaiye doesn't mean sit and go. Baith jaiye means please sit down. This is an example of a compound verb. There are tons of examples available in Hindi and other Indo-Aryan languages, and this has become major part of most of the languages spoken across language families. Therefore, this also becomes one of the defining features of India as a linguistic area. It is a very productive pattern. It is a big topic by itself to look at. I recommend you to look at compound verbs as a separate topic to understand what the whole construction refers to. I will quote few more examples for simplicity to understand. आ जाइए, देख लीजिए, सो जाइए, दे दीजिए, खा लीजिए. All of these expressions are examples of compound verbs in Hindi. I know I am omitting glosses here, but they are all parts of examples of compound verbs from Hindi. They constitute together one semantic unit. They have got two verbs in them. The third example is of conjunctive participle, and they are also, conjunctive participle happens to be one of the features on the basis of which we define India as a linguistic area, as this is also found across languages. In a simple Hindi sentence, घर जाकर खाना खाकर सो गया. Please look at it. These markers indicate conjunctive participle, and I am also giving you purposely an example of compound verb in the same sentence. This sentence means having gone home after taking food, slept. So gaya is one semantic unit, an example of compound verb means slept. Kar is a marker of conjunctive participle in Hindi, and it is added to a verbal stem only, and then after this gets added to a verbal stem and then the verb becomes a conjunctive participle, it does not participate in the agreement. The subject of this sentence is something else, which of course is masculine, which is indicative here on the verb, singular and masculine, masculine and singular, indicative of the agreement. Now, leaving the point of agreement aside, what I want to draw your attention to two parts. One is compound verb, which we have already seen, and I leave that. The next part is conjunctive participle, which I want to draw your attention to, that kar are the markers of conjunctive participles. They attach to a verb stem, and then such verbs do not participate in agreement. We can have as many conjunctive participles as we like in a sentence. The function, one of the functions of conjunctive participle is to put accents in a sequence. That is, when we are putting this in this sequence, we know that going home took place first and eating took place later. If we want to put this in a different order, khana khakar, ghar jakar, so gaya. That means the process of eating took place before the process of going home. So, the major function of conjunctive participle is to put things, put accents in sequence. They conjoin two accents in a particular sequence, and they do not take part in agreement at all. At the same time, no matter how many of these conjunctive participles appear in a sentence, each one of them will be referring to the same subject, will be talking about the same subject in the sentence. That is conjunctive participle. So, I have tried to introduce three terms in short, because we need to move on the larger discussion of the relationship between language and society, and therefore, I have spent a very brief period of time on explaining what these terms mean. I invite you to look at retroflex sounds in phonetics, compound verbs in morphology, and conjunctive participles in sentences, and take a look at these terms in details to understand this phenomena. However, these are the features, these are the syntactic features of languages which are available in languages spoken across families such as Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, Munda, Tibeto-Burman and Andamanese, and this is what happens, this is why, and it is these features which help us conclude that India is one linguistic area, as these features belong to specific families, but with the coexistence together they have a spread to large number of languages across families. The implication of this study on linguistic area in the domain of language and study, language and society, is to understand some of the things which we have looked at before, such as linguistic fluidity. It is the fluid nature of language which helps languages acquire features from other languages in with different structure or similar structure, but it's also possible to acquire features from languages with different genetic origins. So, fluidity is such a feature which is such a thing in language which is insensitive to the genetic origins. Mixing of languages is also insensitive to genetic origin or typological parts, they just mix together respecting no rigidity of boundaries, and this also helps us understand the notion of multilinguality in a micro sense of its definition. Therefore, clearer understanding of the term linguistic area and then the application of this term in at least understanding how India is defined as a linguistic area is relevant for us to understand the broader question of the relationship between language and society. Thank you.